I've still got to go through that emotion. If you're my dog, bro, and then you turn your back on me because you think I've done something and you ain't sat with me, that's foolishness.
It is.
That's foolishness. So no matter what quote anyone gets out of a philosophical author from back in the day, that means nothing when you're my dog. Yeah. Talking. And I see a woman at the back doing this.
Cut.
But I'm still going. I'm vibing now. I'm vibing now. I'm going, I'm talking, I'm going. And the woman's just doing this. And I'm thinking, in my head, I'm like, I don't know why you're doing that, but I don't know if you're doing it to me or to someone else. Someone's had to give me a note. It's like, we need to close this now.
Why?
Someone got murdered outside the building.
No.
And I always say to people, whilst you're commenting on what people should be doing, always just be self-reflective on what you or what you don't do.
What's going on, people? Welcome back to the Afterhours podcast. We're back on track with the episodes. We're back on track with the weekly pods. Obviously, I told you I had a little stumble. Alhamdulillah, all is well. I've had to call down one of my inspiring people that I'm looking up to at the moment. Craig, how are you, sir? I'm
good, bro. I'm good.
I'll stop before the surname, but people know who you are anyway. Craig Pinkney, if you don't know already. Craig, I don't want to box you into just one element of what you do. So if you could please explain exactly what it is you do, bro, because there's too much, man. There's too much.
I always struggle with that question because I wear many hats. And hopefully we can get into that. But I guess most people are aware of my kind of work in the world of kind of criminology and criminal justice. Just to be specific, I specialize in the area of kind of like serious youth violence. Children that have been, or young people that have been caught up in kind of issues to do with kind of like gangs or what we now call county lines, or children that have been radicalized to be involved in whether that's far right extremism or what we know as religious extremism as well. So that's kind of what, in a nutshell, what I'm known for. But in the other hats that I guess I wear, I now run a children's home.
Mashallah.
I've got an amazing staff team that do amazing work in the community. I'm an advisor. I'm a part-time lecturer. I'm a PhD researcher. I'm an entrepreneur. So there's a number of things that I kind of do. That I think that is
Let me give you that applause, man. Let me give you that applause real quick. Sorry, man. You'll get used to that. Carry on.
But yeah, man, just, I wear different hats. It depends on what day you catch me. And I guess my ultimate thing is about what I call black excellence. I just want to level people up so anybody knows if they're around me. My key thing is about how do we open a door and how do we make everyone win. And I think like I take pride in ensuring that the level of excellence that we provide as a service, creates that ripple effect of individuals that stand on our shoulders and then we'll continue for the future generation to be able to do that thing. And I think that's unique because a lot of people sit in one space. So I meet a lot of people that do my thing. It's like they're either an academic or they're a individual that works in the community.
Yeah.
Or I meet someone that's an entrepreneur that's doing multiple business, but I don't meet many people that can do all three.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a unique space of which I want to kind of impart onto other young people that look like me, to be able to, see that inspiration and then level up too.
No, that's good, man. I always say, whoever's doing something in their life, like at any point or any age, there has to have been a reason for them doing what they do now. So I want to go back to your younger self and what made you get into this field and the fact that you want to help other people and the entrepreneurship and that even the thought of helping people. When did that start, Craig?
It's a weird one. I feel like over time in life, you kind of self-explore. You're going to process of self-exploration when you kind of start to know a little bit more about yourself. And I would only say it was really when I left school and kind of my late teens when I kind of realized is that this is something that was in me. And as I got older, I started to kind of reconnect with the teachings of my grandparents and what I learned from, I guess, many of my family members. I guess for me growing up, I said all my uncles and aunties involved in community work. Me and my cousins, we went on that because, when you're from a family that's doing it anyway, you just kind of like, it's just kind of like what it is. Like my son probably sees me doing my thing. In his head, he's not thinking,
I'm gonna do that.
I want to be a community activist or community leader. I'm just his dad. So as I guess was growing up, I seen as I said, my aunts and uncles doing their thing in the community against racial justice, you know, social cohesion, you know, ensuring that people were doing their thing. And then I learned that my grandmother used to have a community centre essentially from our home in Handsworth, where at one point in time, a lot of people were essentially going to that household, and what we would call it now is like a youth and community centre.
Yeah.
You know, she was one of the pioneers that was part of what was known as the Muhammad Ali Centre in Hockley. When Muhammad Ali came many years ago to Birmingham, he visited our family home and apparently was sitting there and drinking tea with the family. But all of that are just stories when you're growing up.
Yeah.
And I guess as you kind of get older, it was only really when I left school with no GCSEs, and I had a mentor at the time that was doing like his own little community thing through his CIC, and it was like coaching and teaching children how to do sport. And I was just like, yeah, I'll do it because I just wanted peace.
That's how you started.
That's how I started. It was because I just wanted peace. My mum said, you got a contract phone. She ain't paying none of the bills.
Yeah, sort it out.
You got to sort it out. And then
Yeah.
I said to my boy, like, yo, this is a situation that we could jump into, is making money. And as I was doing it, I kind of liked it. And I was following him up and down the country, doing some different types of work. I have to big up Herman Wilson. And once his organization was called TBA. So not only were we working with children and young people through sport, but also we're developing some real critical skills, and some of those skills that were linked to how we think, how you move, discipline. And I believe that was kind of the beginning of what was to be later on.
You mentioned something interesting there. Not many people look at it like that.
Yeah.
When you're doing something, not only are you doing it, you're also learning like very important life skills yourself.
It was weird because I always kind of look at it as Herman was kind of like an individual that was teaching us some real prime skills as men. And I always say what's interesting about mentoring is that I've always found that mentors are saying nothing different to what your parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents tell you, but just in a different way. So even though like at home I'm probably being rebellious to my dad, being rebellious to family members and whatever, my mentor's saying the exact same thing, but he's just framing it a different type of way.
What is that? I want to know what
I just feel like when you get a message over and over and over again from the same person,
you don't take it seriously.
not that you don't take it seriously, you just become accustomed to that. Like I know my mum's gonna moan, I know my nan's going to moan, and if you have 37 years of hearing the same moaning, don't hit the same until someone else says, "Yo, fix up, bro."
I got little cousins in Holland, but they're not little, about 20, 22, 21, 18, and then their mum phones me to say, "Yo, come down and chat to them."
Yeah. Cause it hits different.
Yeah, it probably does hit different, yeah.
So there's some moment you land, gold tea, you get me the bald head, here we go now. Big cousins now got something to say to us.
Yeah.
And we're going to listen.
But they've been hearing it from their mum,
Nah,
so
but it's not consistent in your way though.
Okay.
Because remember, they also understand that you understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And they understand that you get what's going on in the context in which they're moving. So, like, if they're doing things dumb, let's say, for example, they're on road, and you know how much it is to make money on road, when you're chatting to them, they know that you know what you're talking about. So, like, for example, you might have a family member that thinks he's a trapper and he's doing his thing or whatever. And when you're talking to him about the numbers and saying, yeah, but my man's got you as some runner, he don't really want to hear that because his mum's not saying that to him. His mum's just saying, I don't want you to do this. I don't want you to do that. It's upsetting us and the family. You're going to go jail. They're doing all of that. Emotion. But what we come with is emotion and logic.
That's true.
And that emotion and logic is what they probably sometimes connect to. And that's why sometimes mentoring becomes a good thing. So when I think about my growth and development, it was only until later that some other mentors approached me and was like, yo, you'd be a really good youth worker.
Yeah.
And I was just like, nah, I'm not really, I don't want to do youth work. I'm only doing this because I want to make peas and I got to pay my phone bill.
But look, you say that though, because look, life is amazing. So now you mentioned that your family had a history of doing all this youth work and you want to make money, and your first thought is, let me just help my man who's got a CIC with the kids and do the sports. So you were already attracted to it, like subconsciously anyway. So when they approach you and said, I want you to be a youth worker, this is like, you can't argue with God's plan, bro.
I hear that. I think at the moment though, I was only focused on the peas though. That's what I'm saying.
Play.
These are the days where, remember, I'm a lot older than you. Like, so the days where man had mobile phones, like I'm gassed just to have my little phone, and that's my lifeline right now. This is MSN days. You know, I need to be able to connect with my boys on my mobile phone. So for me, I wasn't thinking about the work. Later I reflected on it and I'm agreeing with what you're saying. But in the moment, I'm not interested in working with these youths. I like it, but really, I'm just trying to get to Friday so we can get £170. And I feel like Herman was robbing us. He's probably going to watch this now. I'm sure he was robbing us.
I don't say that. Was it weekly? Was it weekly?
Yeah, it's weekly.
That's not bad.
But he was doing mad hours though, bro.
Was it?
He's doing mad hours. And I talked to him about that one, but it's all fun and jokes. And it's always love. But what I'm saying is the principles that he was teaching us that in my world kind of developed me to become partly the man that I am today. And I just feel like that was really imperative that when then those workers said to me, boom, Craig, you'd be a good youth worker. Despite the fact that I didn't like what they were saying, I had the skills because that's what they were trying to. That's what they're trying to get me to identify with. Yes. You've got the skill set. So then I went on to do a number of kind of like youth programs. So I done my first one at Newtown Community Centre. Then I done my second one at Summerfield Youth Centre. And at that particular time, I always say it was weird because where I lived growing up in Hockley, we were always told by the elders, there ain't no reason why you need to be in Newtown or Los House or Neachels. There's no reason why you need to be there because that's the up block. And as kids, you develop these kind of narratives. You do. And you develop fear and you develop anxiety. You develop all of these different things about the boogeyman that lives over there. But the reality is what I found was that I didn't have a problem with no one. And secondly, I used to go primary school with the majority of the people that people would claim that they've got a problem with. And I feel like me breaking through that barrier there enabled me to pursue something that I knew was going to have some benefit to me later on. And then a few years after that, that's when I decided to go to university and then study as a youth and community worker. And then I had to move to Leicester, done my degree, had loads of different challenges. I discovered that I was dyslexic, which kind of made sense to my earlier education. And then when I graduated, I have to big up Dr. Carlton Howson because he was an individual in the university that really, really made me see myself through a different lens of an individual that can contribute. And I don't have to live this life that I see a lot of people living, this double life of, you know, they have to fake it till they make it. They have to add parts to their story that makes them something bigger than they are. So I meet men all the time that will go to certain spaces where they're no outside of Brum and talk about there was the most serious man in Brum that was in this set, that was with that gang that used to do all of this madness. But they know that if they was to say that in Brum, man are going to check them and say, nah, you weren't that guy. Yeah. But I never had to be that person. Because, yes, I grew up in the ends in B18 with all of the individuals around Hockley and Winston Green that everybody knows about. But I just weren't that guy. Everybody knows Craig used to just keep it moving. And my dad was like Lawrence Fishburne in Boys in the Hood. Yeah, I was that was my dad. It's not happening. Same. It's not happening. You get what I'm saying? Like, you can be cool with all of them, but 7 o'clock you need to be in the yard.
If you're not, I'm outside.
If you're not, I'm outside. That embarrassment alone just made you conform. You get what I'm saying? So that's what I think makes me unique, though, when I'm talking about my journey, though, as becoming a youth worker, because I've not had to do the extra. Most people I know that want to do the work that I do, they're coming with this magical story, and there's nothing wrong with the story. But I'm saying the story puts people in a box that gives people the opportunity to judge at what level of badness, what level of trapping, what level of road, and I've never had to do that. I just do my thing.
Nah, you mentioned something there twice now. So real quick, I just want to go back to your university lecturer that you said spotted.
Dr. Carlton Howson.
Yeah, Dr. Carlton Howson. What difference was his impact on you than the CIC, the people that said, I want you to be a youth worker? Did they both spot something in you, or was it on a different level?
I just look at it as the continuation of mentorship. That's how I look at it is. So my pops has always been my mentor.
Yeah, facts.
Always been my guide and always will be. Herman. From Herman to Wezai and Yasmin.
They're the youth workers.
They were the two youth workers, and Christine, big her up as well. And then from them, Dr. Carlton Howson. Nice. So the continuation of mentorship and guidance, despite it was different faces, the guidance remained the same.
Nah, that's good.
They were able to identify something within me that I wasn't able to identify within myself. And it was only through that kind of critical, mainly my second and third year, that I had that kind of realization of my contribution, and that's why I wanted to come back to the ends. So when I finished my degree, my first thing was I want to work in the ends, and that's what got me the job at Oakland's Youth Centre at the top of Soho Road.
Because you mentioned Youth Centre just now and before as well, in the Lozells and in Newtown. This is probably just going on a different tangent. What happened in 2008, 2009 when they closed everything off? Remember what happened then?
So during
they shut down my one as well, my youth centre.
So remember, we had a switch of government, so we went from Labour to Tory.
Tory,
yeah. So when David Cameron came in, the conversation was about the broken society. If you remember, they were talking about there's things that we need to be doing better, how we can better spend our resources, and what they wanted to do was essentially move funds around. And when the moving of that funds, it meant that youth and community and anything to do with children's services, types of services, basically got cut.
Got zero or got less?
Got less. So we're talking about going from 1.2 billion to under $500,000 in terms of funding, in terms of those particular types of services. Police also were cut, and a number of other services was cut. So what you probably noticed from your little area was that the big youth centre that used to be 3 miles away stayed open, but all the little centres in your area are now closed. Because what the thinking was, if all of the workers can go to the main centre, then all is gravy. But the problem is that in our little pockets and communities and the way that we are, we've got a village mentality. So everybody stays to their pockets, they're set, they're cut. What we call it now is postcodes, but everybody stays to their little set. So why am I travelling 4 miles to go to the youth centre, and my youth centre was right across the road from the house?
Street,
So now that's shut, I don't want to go to that centre because there's issues that might be in that area. 4 miles up the road, there's issues with
you got to run into issues
and all of those issues. So I don't want to put myself in that situation to end up in that situation or scenario. Or what we have then is some youth saying, you know what, I'm going to go, but I'm going to carry a weapon. You got some youth saying, yeah, I'm going to go, but I'm rolling with my set. And then what happens then is that these hubs and centres, there's issues that are taking place that people then can't control. So they've took away the money. They've took away particular services like EMA, remember? People were getting P's to go college and do training. Remember, they took away things like Sure Start to help parents, to help funding around parents that had children in the community. They took away things like Connections. They shut most of the youth centres. And remember, Connections is where I met Weza, Yasmin. And so all those things are now being cut. We fast forward 10 years.
Yeah.
In that time, we've had the disturbances in 2011, what we call the riots, across the UK. And then 2006, 7, 8, 9, what we started to see was an increase in something that we called knife crime. Remember when we heard knife crime, this was only kicking off in Glasgow.
Yeah, knife crime.
We only heard man going on nuts in Glasgow. So that's where Glasgow was like the knife crime capital of Europe. Then we talk about 10 years after that now, what we're starting to notice, not only knife crime has been an issue, gun crime is now on an increase, and now there's a new thing called county lines and criminal exploitation, and young people are being groomed, coerced, manipulated to go out of town to make money for individuals to do their thing in Dubai. And then now we're hearing of radicalization and extremism post-September 11th. So what we have now is a lot of issues taking place with children and young people, but one of the things that we do, and as a criminologist, I look at, well, what was the foundation that was set in order to create that? Yeah. So in that time of 2008, 9 and 10, I was managing Oakland's Youth Centre in Handsworth, and I had to leave my centre to go to another centre in Newtown because it wasn't closing, but all of the small centres that closed, the managers needed to go somewhere. So a manager needed to come into my centre, and it's almost like a domino effect, and they also offered redundancy. So my thing was, at that time, I need to do something with it, and I always take a risk, and I took a risk, and I got an opportunity of teaching on a part-time program at the University College Birmingham, and it was like a 4-year project. It was an EU project with France, Cyprus, Italy, Romania, Greece, and the UK around how do we respond to violence. So I was teaching on this particular program. Quite a long story short, the individuals that were on that program basically said that the lecturers were good, but they liked Craig.
Nice.
That worked in my favour. So then I went from only teaching one module to teaching most of the course. And then not only going from one teaching some of the course, it ended up being, do you want an actual job at the university teaching full time? So I had to make a decision.
And
do I want to do the the youth and community thing, or do I want to do the lecturing thing? And I'll be honest, I looked at the P's and I thought lecturing pays way more than youth work, pays almost double. And I said, I'm going to do the lecturing thing. And then in that kind of 8 years when I lectured at UCB, where I taught youth and community studies, where I taught criminology and criminal justice, I felt like that's where I developed my niche, where I was able to utilize the knowledge that I had working in those communities with all the mandem as such that are involved in all of the things that you read about in your newspaper, but going into an academic space and being able to break it down in a way in which students can learn what's going on in their community and develop the skills and the attributes that when they graduate, they can go back into the community and engage. And I think that journey over the last 7 years was what I think gave me more national attention, because in that period between that, where you was talking about the 2008 and 9, I was probably one of the only youth workers in the country that was using social media in the way in which I was using social media. So every time an incident happened in a local community, you may remember Curry's before it licked down. You used to have them little flip top cameras. So I used to always just jump online. If you look at my early videos on my YouTube page, you'll probably notice that I'm saying, yo, this is just happening in the community. The community need to do this. Let's meet at this particular event and let's talk about it. So that was giving me national traction.
Of course, he's that news reporter.
So then when I then started to come into the university space now, what was happening was people from different countries were saying, yo, that stuff that you're doing is kind of like what we do over here. Can we have a conversation? Then I'm going over Ireland. Then I'm going to America. Then now I'm invited to the Caribbean. And then what TED Talk did was then just put me in a whole different arena and level.
Wait, you did a TED Talk?
Yeah.
Wait.
So I was at an event, and I can't remember what the event was. I think it might have been an event with now First Class Legacy, and big up Nathan Dennis on that one. But I was speaking at a particular event. I can't remember what the event was about. But as I was leaving, a lady approached me and said to me, you know, I was listening to you talk.
Nice.
And she's basically part of the kind of
invitees of TED.
Of TED. So she said, would you be interested? She said, it's a long shot, but she's going to go to her producers, have a conversation. And then she came back to me and said, you've got basically 8 minutes, because obviously TED is based on minutes. So
10 minutes and 8 minutes and stuff.
But what people don't know about TED is that you get a whole kind of package that comes with it. So you get kind of like a speech and language coach. You get like a presentation coach. So there's some real prep that goes into
behind the scenes
before you actually deliver the TED Talk. And I just felt like I took it up as a sponge. I just embraced it as a massive sponge.
When was this, if you don't like, in your timeline of?
I want to go back now, say 2016, 17.
What about like chronological order? Is this after you said, I'll take the job at the university?
Yeah, so I'm at the university.
You're at the university now?
At the university.
Go on, carry on.
What TED done was, I felt like it enabled me to be able to articulate how I'm articulating on a different level. So I look at this as all like growth and development. And during that time, and then also I had another mentor. I had two. So one, many people would know as Raymond Douglas, anti-violence, and then many would also know Dr. Martin Glynn. And in my opinion, one of the leading criminologists talking about what we talk about in terms of issues that concern us. So if you've noticed, there's a pattern here.
Yeah, there is.
Continuation of mentors and continuation of black men. So I think that this was also really important. So what TED did was amplify who I was on another level. And it was mad, because I just remember getting an email one day. It was in LinkedIn, and the email said that it was almost like, good morning, I'm someone I represented from the Ministry of Justice in Jamaica.
Oh shit.
The country is in a state of emergency, and basically the Prime Minister and the government want you to come over to talk about your research on how to reduce issues of violence. And I remember I just read it, you know, like when you just get these.
Yeah.
I just read it and I just blanked it, and then I got another message like a couple of days later, like, have you seen the above message? So you know when you just read it again, like, are they saying that they want me to go over there? So I sent an email back saying,
elaborate, yeah.
Not necessarily elaborate, but if it's 30, email my main email address. This is my work email address. So when the emails come in now with the government stamp, I just ran to my manager's office, and again, another sick manager. another guide and mentor, Dr. Sangeeta Sony, I have to big her up. She sent the email and she was just like, Craig, I'll sign whatever you need to. You just need to go. And I just feel like I've been blessed in a sense that I've always had individuals that just want me to elevate and want me to do really well.
It's probably because you want to learn. Like, I was chatting to Fids last time, yeah? And I told my boy as well the other day, like, you can never have, like, pride and say you know everything. It seems like from your story, you want to learn from these people. So, of course, you're going to say they're amazing because if you want to learn about a podcast, for example, I'll be humble to speak to someone that's been in the game for 10 years or 20 years. I would never act like I've got a sick podcast. I don't need you. So it seems like you want to learn these things, but carry on. And then she signed it.
And I always put myself as a student. So
yeah, exactly.
Anyway, I ran down
yeah.
to finance. Everything got set up. They paid for my
Flight and
accommodation. And I flew over when there was people getting blasted left, right, and centre.
Yeah, this is a bad time.
You can imagine my family were scared. Everybody's like, yo, I mean, even the man them from the ends are like, yo, know what you're doing, you know, bro, when you're over there. And it was mad. But when I got there, the experience was amazing. And I think this is when I kind of started to realize that, you know, when we talk about not everybody wants good for you. Because there was a narrative at that time. And I think that was probably the first time I sensed that there was an energy that exists around me, even though that I'm doing good. And it's weird because one of the things that I guess I noticed was what the role of me going to Jamaica was not how people was interpreting it. So I think some people interpreted that I was going to go to Jamaica with a magic pill, change the government. All they called me for was to ask me about my research. For them,
because they said that,
public health models to reduce the violence. But then, you know, when you have like conversations with people in the community and you're like, people just like make a off chance
remark
like, what you think you're going to change Jamaica?
You think you're sick in that now, yeah?
And I'm like, but that wasn't what I was going there for. And I think that was the first time that I kind of realized that statement that my dad used to always say, not everybody that you're around wants good for you. Strike one, because we're going to go through the strikes today in the session.
I'm going to put a strike here because that's some real stuff there.
And then, as I said, went to Jamaica. It was an amazing experience. It was crazy because my family's from Jamaica. I didn't tell them that I was there. So as you can imagine, the first day that I got there, they put me on live TV first thing in the morning. So they're just like, yo, who's this English criminologist coming over here to talk about
Wait, you didn't
violence?
tell your family that you were going to Jamaica?
Because it wasn't a
family.
It wasn't a family link up. I'm there for work.
Nah, you gotta tell them though, man.
You don't know families in Jamaica, bro.
Is it bad?
So what happened was...
Carry on.
What happened was, I've done the thing. Obviously, it's national news. Everybody's phoning the UK now, stressing out my nan, my auntie. Craig's in the country, ain't told us, where's he at? So now they're phoning me like, yo, your uncles, cousins are trying to find where you're at. And I'm saying, listen, I don't know what time I'm coming home, man. Like, I can't give you a designated time because I'm working. Bro, when I finished my day, my family were outside my hotel, bro. Found me. This is what I'm saying to you.
Carry on.
My family were outside the hotel, bro. I didn't tell them what hotel I was in, bro. They found out I was in the ends. You get what I'm saying? So it's all love, though. It was happy we had food and it was whatever. But as you can imagine, now they want to roll now.
Yeah, of course.
But it's not a rolling situation. I'm here to do a specific job. But it was amazing. And I think one of the biggest things that for me was really good was, I say loosely that it was really good that I was doing a session with someone from the Ministry of Justice, and we were delivering to the local community that was dealing with issues around violence, and what they were trying to come up with a solution around how do they develop kind of restorative practices when someone gets killed. How do they rebuild back the community? And I just kind of felt that the model that they learned, and it was someone that from Canada came in and gave them this model, I felt like it's not fit for purpose based on the historical nature of violence, understanding the impact of colonialism on the island of Jamaica. And
what was his module? What was his theory?
No, so it was about restorative justice.
So what did he say they should do?
The model essentially, in a nutshell, was basically when a traumatic experience happens, there needs to be an opportunity where both victims and perpetrators and mediators in between can resolve the situation. I'm saying in the current context,
that can't happen now.
It can't happen.
Yeah.
You know, because there needs to be an element of healing. I believe there needs to be an element of what I call violence interruption, because the moment a man says, yo, my cousin got blasted, It's man of riding.
Yeah, there's too much
So
heat,
you
yeah.
need to understand that context. And my critique was whoever those individuals that they used before I don't think
It sounds good on paper. They're one.
Yeah, but in reality,
Yeah,
it didn't
yeah,
make
yeah,
any sense. But anyway, cut a long story short, I'm yapping, I'm talking, I'm in my mode now. I'm with my people and everyone's talking. And then to the right of me, the brother from the Ministry of Justice, someone says something to me and he just gets up and gets off. Don't say nothing to me. But I'm just thinking maybe he's gone toilet. Talking. And I see a woman at the back doing this. But I'm still going. I'm vibing now. I'm vibing now. I'm going. I'm talking. I'm going. And the woman's just doing this. And I'm thinking, in my head, I'm like, I don't know why you're doing that, but I don't know if you're doing it to me or to someone else. Someone's had to give me a note. It's like, we need to close this now.
Why?
Someone got murdered outside the building.
No.
And one of whoever got murdered outside of the building, it was one of the community activists that were in the room. It was their nephew. So just to kind of give you a little bit of context, the whole reason why I was at this particular building was because I had one day off to chill and love a little bit of the sun of Jamaica. But some local gang members seen me obviously on TV and wanted to have a conversation.
Just a conversation.
So I'm down for that.
Yeah, of course.
So the whole purpose of that was to meet the community leaders, like the people like me in their community. But I'm assuming whatever block it was, a madness happened outside the building, so we needed to leave right then. So as you can imagine, everybody's all in panic mode. One other thing I didn't tell you, I had an armed guard that was with me from the second I jumped off the plane up until the point of me going home. And his name was Mr. Phillips. So my thing was, if Mr. Phillips is calm, I'm calm. And to an extent, violence or gun violence in Jamaica is at another level to gun violence here, but we live in a community and an environment where them things happen, and not at that level, but it happens. So I'm not ignorant or under no illusion to how things can get down when things get sticky. So my thinking was, if Mr. Phillips is calm, I'm calm. But by me doing that, they're looking at me like, yo, you're sick. Because they're saying the Canadian man, them was shook when these things was happening. And I know this was just like, you know, it's just part and part of, I guess, the lives and the work that we essentially do. So we got escorted at the back. We left. As I said, everybody was just kind of looking at me now like, you're the man. Like, we respect how you're moving and you're not going unscared. So I came back to the UK. And I again felt like my credibility kind of went up a little bit. So
Price went up.
I wouldn't say the price went up because it was the same. Because remember, I was going on behalf of the university, and I guess I got to a particular point at the university where I felt like I was being pigeonholed. I wanted to do so much more. My manager, Dr. Sangita Sonia, felt like, you know what, I could also give more. And then I was dealing with some real issues, man. There was a lot of hate and envy that was happening in the community. And there was people that were trying to destroy me for all the wrong reasons. People that would smile in my face and then claim that they're my people, but they would do things behind my back to try and destroy me in a certain place. And then reminding me of what my dad said again, that there's going to be people that are around you that ideally don't want you to get to where you're getting to. And people are happy for you to get to certain levels of success. But as long as that it's not above them. And we hear all of these kind of quotes all the time.
Now, you know what? That journey itself is like everyone has to go through it and find out what's real and what's not. But so you went through it after.
It's mad though, and I hear that. And I think, you know why it's hard and difficult, bro? Is because you see when you're a person that just gives.
Yeah.
And you're an individual that I'm happy to see someone else win above me.
Yeah.
And because I'm so selfless in where I do what I do.
You think everyone's like that?
No, I don't think everyone that. It's just hard to comprehend because it's a real emotion.
Yeah.
So people can say that to you. With comes success, comes everything else. People say that to you, but I'm a human being. I've still got to go through that emotion. If you're my dog, bro, and then you turn your back on me because you think I've done something and you ain't sat with me, that's foolishness.
It is.
That's foolishness. So no matter what quote anyone gets you out of a philosophical author from back in the day, that means nothing when you're my dog.
Yeah,
you're supposed to come to me and chat to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when those things happen, I can't lie to you. It hurts me, impacts me in a range of different ways. So when I then left the university because I just kind of felt that I was being pigeonholed into just teaching criminology 24/7. I just felt like I didn't want to
Yeah,
do
I feel
that
like you
anymore.
were, yeah.
That's why I developed Solve. And I just kind of felt like Solve as an entity was going to do all of the things that I wanted to do. And I thought to myself, and I had this conversation with one of my old mentors and close friends and colleagues, Raymond Douglas. You know, like what's the one thing that I do? And it was solve problems. But I wondered, and he was like, you need to call it the Center for Youth Violence and Conflict, because that encompasses everything that you do, from research, from advisory, from being an advocate, from delivering in terms of the lecturing. So I actually don't feel like I left lecturing.
No, you didn't.
It just meant that now I'm doing it for
on a higher scale, on a bigger scale.
Higher scale, but then I have the autonomy and the freedom to do what I want and how I want to do it. So I handed in my notice on the 7th of December 2020. I remember my manager saying, Craig, are you sure you want to do this? I'm like, I'm ready. And on that same day, on my break time, I walked over to Lloyd House in Birmingham City Centre.
Yeah.
That's where the headquarters of, you know, where the police are.
Yeah.
Now, inside of that building, that's where the Police and Crime Commission also sit. And I remember going in there, and then one of my other good friends, colleagues, and also someone that I really look up to, Alethea Fuller. At that time, there was loads of kind of recommendations in Birmingham of how they're going to respond to serious youth violence. And there was an underspend in training around this. So I came to her and like, yo, just handed in my notice, like, I need to start figuring out what I can do and give me some advice. And she was like, Craig, like, perfect timing.
Oh, shit.
There's someone that needs to do training in the city.
Yeah.
And then so they commissioned me to do the training around the serious youth violence agenda in Birmingham.
As well as you had Solve already.
What?
Did you have Solve already, or was that
Solve just started?
Was that part of Solve as well?
Yeah, so Solve just started. So remember, I've handed in my notice.
Yeah.
I know I'm leaving, but I now need to start thinking about how I'm going to make bread.
Yeah, you need money,
moving forward. And it just was literally, I've walked out of one situation and stepped into a next one. But the sad thing that happened after that was COVID.
How did that affect you, bro?
Bro, I just remember logging on one morning after Boris made the announcement, and all of the sessions and things that I had planned,
Cancelled.
we have to cancel.
Yeah.
No, it was messing with my anxiety, bro. Remember, I'm just going from a job.
Yeah.
I had a very good paid job at the university.
Which you would have been still getting paid at the university.
Regardless, at home, whatever. It was stress.
Yeah, of course.
So I had another friend that basically told me that your social media and technology is the way forward. And they helped me to understand Zoom, understand Eventbrite, and I just started to slap all of the courses that I did.
On Zoom.
That was part of my prospectus on Zoom. And then what happened was I found in a very effective way of being able to deliver all of my training courses on social media platforms, doing events, and that COVID made Solve. I was one of the few companies during that time, whilst I was watching and observing a lot of companies dissolve and have to change their way of doing things. COVID birthed Solve.
Yeah, I say that a lot of times when people say COVID. I don't. COVID made this room as well. COVID made this podcast. Yeah. So as well as there's been a lot of negatives, you can pull some positives out of COVID. When you say, because I always say this when I get people on here, yeah, and it's crazy because they always say, yeah, and then I started this, or yeah, and then I started that company and went. For people that don't know, I'm a little bit baffled. I'm a little bit like intrigued at what is Solve and how did you start it exactly, and what is it now? And because I know from looking at your stuff,
sure,
I know you do houses for kids. I know you do a lot of workshops in a lot of different areas in the UK, not even Birmingham. That's massive to the future of the kids. So what is it exactly? Because I don't want to make it seem like it's just a small.
Yeah, that's why I said in the beginning of my introduction, I wear a number of hats and entities. So if you look at the word Solve as like an umbrella term, there's different tenets to an umbrella, right? So you've got Solve as the main company. And Solve is where I do all of my advisory work. So if the local government, a statutory organisation, or the local community want to bring me in and say, yo, Craig, I need help into building my organisations. I need help in understanding how I need to price when I'm working with these organizations, or I need to have some advice about how I go about doing this one thing with the problem that we have. So as a consultant, I have a consultancy company. Then I have a community interest company where all of the work that you probably see me doing is through that. So the stuff I do in community, the stuff I do in schools, the stuff I do with local authority, children's services, up and down the country, that's the CIC. Now, with that particular company, we offer products and services. So I've developed a kind of model within that I don't need to rely on funding, government funding, in order for my company to sustain itself. So we offer training, we offer advisory work, we offer consultancy. I even have mentors, which I'll talk about my success story in a moment. I have mentors that do stuff in the local community. Nice. And then the organizations would pay us for our services, and that's how I'm able to sustain that in that way. So then I have a company which is an online learning center, of which I'm only one person. I can't be all over the country and around the world at one time. So this is an opportunity for those professionals that want to get an accredited course or a non-accredited course and get certification in some sort of learning. They can go via this particular platform, sign up online. They get all of the videos that will give them enough for them to be able to complete their course, if it's 1 day, 2 day courses, so on and so forth. And then the third company that I have, the fourth company that I have,
big one,
is the registered children's home.
That is amazing.
So originally we started, and I say we because that's the only company where there's a partnership and 3-way partnership within that. And we have a 5-bedroom home, houses 4 children. And currently we have 3 children in the home at the minute, and that is in the Birmingham area. So just to kind of give you that kind of insight, that a lot of the kind of finance that I developed during that COVID was utilized to be able to build that entity. So one thing I look at it is it shapes something else. And I just feel like, so I wear a lot of hats. I'm very busy, but that's why I have an amazing PA, Felicia, big up Philly, to kind of organize my world and make it make sense in 7 days of the week, whilst looking after family and whilst, being the main person that, a lot of people kind of look up to get that help and support.
Wow, first of all, it's big work, man. That's amazing. There's a lot of good things there that you're doing for the community and also for those kids, those 3 kids. Is there going to be more coming? Or
Yeah. So ideally, it's children that we want to be there permanently.
Nice.
But once we get to a place where they can be reintegrated back with their family, or they get to a certain age, they can
move out,
live their lives in it. So it's just one of those ones. But sometimes we may have emergencies where we may just get a call from children's service where a child needs to sleep somewhere tonight, and we'll open our doors for that.
Craig, I wanted to ask you, obviously this is an amazing success story, and not every success story happens overnight. There's been a lot of work that you've been doing for years, but I want to ask you a serious question now. Is when you all the years of youth work and criminology work, and have you noticed anything that let me word this correctly, because there's a lot of main issues that's happening today that were always happening 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago. They were always happening, but no one really knew what they were. No one could put a finger on it. So have you come across any issues where you've dealt with like real life mental health, and also how do you protect yourself from any mental health issues dealing with a lot of like the Jamaica thing that could cause you some serious mental health as well?
I feel like the work that I think some of us do in this particular space, you asked 2 questions. So the first one is there's not one answer to terms of the issues, the multifaceted, from poverty to deprivation,
racism,
mental health, racism, fear, anxiety, poor leadership, lack of resources, gentrification.
That's a big one.
All of these different issues create a social environment where behaviors and the thinking of individuals in that environment can essentially change. Now, one of the things I talk about in my work is that we have to start establishing what our lanes are and stay within it. That's why somebody can't phone me and tell me I need to do that. And I always say to people, whilst you're commenting on what people should be doing, always just be self-reflective on what you don't do. So to your question, of course, this work that we're dealing with, it creates issues of mental health, even potentially with workers, because I feel like part of the work we do, it normalizes and desensitizes us to the things that we're responding to. Perfect example, obviously I can't talk about all cases for confidentiality purposes, but let's say there was a murder that happened not too long ago. Now, because of the role that I play as an advisor, I have the unique opportunity sometimes to be a part of a panel, be a part of a group, and sometimes we might see footage of things that have happened in a particular area or community, knowing that there's going to be most likely some sort of criminal justice proceedings, so on and so forth. Now, part of our role when I'm around these groups, that we now have to ascertain who's going to do what in terms of supporting that family or that community that may be impacted. So I might have a mum that's just lost their son, and she's screaming, bro, from within her chest. You have to stand and listen to that.
Yeah, you do.
She's saying, what are you doing to help? What can you do to help? And you know in your head that really, you can't just click a button and something's going to happen overnight, but they need answers today. Then you've got the brothers and the sisters whiling out at school, and the school are now talking about suspending them or permanently excluding them. You've now got to deal with that. Plus, you've got your own situation, your own family, and your own problems that you've got to deal with, your own trials and tribulations. And sometimes we do this work and there's no output. So we're giving ourselves to everybody. Plus, you've got the critique, you got the haters, you got the jealousy, you got people saying that you should be doing this and that. People that don't understand what you're doing have also got something to say. You've got to deal with all of that. And all you're just trying to do is provide for the community. So there's times where the work that we do is hard, and especially when I speak to a lot of my friends and colleagues, it comes to a point where you just don't understand. I know some people that are selfless, do free interventions, but yet you'll have people that will say, they're stealing money and they're doing all of this thing. And I'm thinking, where do people get this information from? And, people say, words, sticks and stones, break your bones, or words don't hurt. Of course they do.
Yeah.
Words hurt. And especially when it comes from your own people, especially when it comes from people that watched you come up and I know that it just wasn't a fluke, and I watched you go hard for a long period of time. So it impacts. So you've got to deal with the fact that you're trying to deal with a situation that's sensitive because you're emotive, and I've got a 13-year-old son, bro. So the moment that I see a 13-year-old son, a boy get shot, stabbed, paralyzed, or whatever in the community, I can't not ignore that.
Of course not.
Because I feel that with me. And then the worst thing is, in my world, is sometimes I know the perpetrators because I've worked with them.
I was going to say,
so I've got that situation where I'm working with the victim, but I also know who did it. Because I've worked with them for many years, whether it's in a youth centre capacity, whether that's working in the community or working with them via their family or through children's services or via the police. Regardless of what it is, you develop relationships. So sometimes there's been issues and incidents where murders happen in our community where I'm supporting, or my organisation or organisations are supporting a victim's family, but I also know the perpetrator. Then it becomes a hard situation.
It does. What's your outlet then, Craig? What's your outlet?
I go gym. I travel a lot. I try to surround myself with individuals that always are kind of trying to elevate me to be the best that I can be. I value mentorship, so I value the elders and the wisdom that they essentially come with. That kind of keeps me going. But I always say that there's a lot of people that don't even think about an output. So what oftentimes happens is they get frustrated, they get angry, and they either sometimes leave doing the work that they're passionate about, or they become so numb that there is no kind of emotion when they're trying to project and doing an intervention that is possible. And I think those types of people, I always talk about in my work, things like clinical supervision. So one of the things I also talk about that I also embark on is things like therapy. And I always say black men need therapy. We need to talk more about the things that we do. And second to that, I think that we need to have better spaces where we have conversation. As a young buck that I love in the community, I met him actually through one of the other young people that I used to do some work with. His name's Omar. And he's kind of like develops like a little group that we meet up like once or twice a month. And he has like a little group of, enthusiastic men that are on the journey to success, and we come in and we have conversations and we reason, but we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. So we put all of our issues on the table. Like, I'm not perfect. I've done some mad things. I'm assuming everybody else has. But I think it's important that sometimes we have those conversations and hold each other accountable. So, for example, someone might be like, you know what? I've done this last year. Wasn't probably the greatest idea. This is what I've done. But we hold each other accountable. More importantly, we talk about what does the level up look like.
Yeah.
And I think it's difficult because sometimes, as I said, if you live in a community that has you under the microscope, every mistake that you make, people don't forget.
It's multiplied, yeah.
People don't forget, and people say, oh, yeah, but you done that 3 years ago, so who's to say that you're not going to do that today?
Yeah.
And you're dealing with all of that, and you're just trying to cut through. And I think it's important that we acknowledge when we talk about things like mental health, I think it's very mindful, and we have to be very mindful about people dealing with their own trials and tribulations.
That's true.
So there's times where sometimes I might even have a friend and I don't hear from him or her for a long time. I don't have it in my head that they're beefing with me. Sometimes I just look at like that they might be just dealing with their problem in their situation at that particular time. But then I also think that sometimes, I guess in my world, and I think other people, sometimes people don't give you that same benefit of the doubt.
Ooh.
So whereas I might do that for you, you don't do that for me. That's where I'm saying that it becomes personal. So again, I'm going back to the point about the quotes. You can give me a philosophical
strike two.
quote.
Is that strike two there?
But you can strike four we're at now. But you can give me a philosophical quote, but that hits different when somebody I look up to or people that I look up to, that I always give you the benefit of the doubt, but never you give me the benefit of the doubt.
That's true. Man.
How is that fair? How is that right? But one of the things that you learn and you understand that, as I said, by default, things like jealousy, things like envy, things like entitlement sits in the hearts of the people that you love. It sits in the hearts of the people that you love. And I think part of the process of becoming successful, whilst you understand that, I feel that there's something that we need to build to develop the resilience within that. And I don't think nobody teaches that. Nah. So people give you the quotes and the statements and the realness, but nobody don't give you the tools to be able to be resilient, that when your right hand does that to you, what do you do then? When a man them say like, yo, they're in a court situation or they're in a station, their right hand snitches on them. I can only assume it feels like that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And you can't prepare people for that feeling. And I feel like why I'm glad that we're talking about things like mental health, because it's so real that sometimes people just want you to be robotic and they want you to be the same forever. And it's the moment like when you start to show levels of growth, they say things like you've changed, but the reality is that you haven't changed, you've just grown. And then there's the other part of, there's elements of you that should change in terms of growth and development. But what they're talking about is the elevation, but the characteristics and your personality doesn't change. And I think sometimes when you've got family and friends that think and kind of operate in a certain way and obviously has that entitlement, it's very hard, to kind of, cut through when you're a person that cares about people.
I was reading some article at uni a few months ago about systemic racism in the sports industry, where they look at black athletes different to white athletes. I just wanted to see if it fits into the youth work that you do as well. When you've got commissioners and you've got leaders of youth centres, do they look at black children a lot more different than they look at any other race?
The statistics demonstrate that disproportionality and disparity exists across the fibre of our nation. I think it's important that we understand that. Like, I know that you've put them into categories, but the categories resembles the whole system as itself. So when you're talking about things like racism, systemic racism exists in all fibres of our society, from sport, from music, from entertainment, from education, from healthcare, to housing, to business. All of these different things essentially exist. Now, the key thing is about understanding of how it functions. And oftentimes the function is linked to what I call in my analogy when we talk about prejudice plus power. One of the things that we don't oftentimes look at is how the system approaches particular groups and organizations and individuals that may come into contact with those particular entities and organizations. So when you talk about things like sport, because it's very easy to monetize the abilities of what people are doing, it's very easy to say it's not about race, it's about the talent or it's about something else. But when you look at other aspects of whether it's mental health, whether it's education, the statistics show some very interesting data, and the data suggests that there is an overrepresentation of people that look like me that don't seem to be getting the best deal in any type of situation. So when you look at things like Stop and Search, we know that black and Asian males are 8 to 9 times more likely to be stopped and searched compared to their white counterparts. You look at mental health and you look at, 7 to 8 times more likely men and women are likely to be sectioned under the Mental Health Act greater than their white counterparts. And you start looking at all of this different data in children's services, youth services, you can't help but acknowledge that when black children and young people or people of colour enter into these different institutions, someone or something is doing something that has an adverse impact on their lives. And that might be based on a decision. That might be based on a decision that's linked to somebody's bias. That might be they're linked to somebody's cultural practice that's been left to be normal within that particular institution. And because nobody doesn't challenge it in a certain type of way, that's where it's able to remain and it's able to continue. And I think when we look at the wider society and look at how racism impacts the lives of people, we have to start to look at this in a critical way and say, what are we not doing and what things do we need to be doing different in order to get the results? And one thing we know about money is that when you start disbanding and taking people's money away, that's when people start paying attention. And the second we start talking about disbanding things and we start talking about cutting the money and we start consuming things that would essentially shake that status quo, that's when people start paying attention.
Yeah, that's true. No, but that's people have done that a few times when they've said I'm not performing or I'm not doing the show, and that's, I think it's never going to get rid of racism. You'll see like hidden racism and I think that's worse than actually it's not out and out racism.
My issue is not just about stopping.
Okay.
Same thing. I talk about violence. If I can't change world poverty, I'm not going to stop knife crime in my ends.
Nice.
But can I reduce it? Yes, I can.
That's a good
And it's
point.
about acknowledging what reduction looks like. So if we collectively start having these conversations about, I'm going to consistently do this, and not one man's talking like, yeah, but it's going to hurt my peas, bruv. That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's why it don't sustain, because a man wants to do up until his bank account's starting to look a little bit low.
Yeah.
And I don't blame nobody for doing anything. I'm just saying that's what the facts demonstrate. We have to start to have more clear objectives of what it is that we want to achieve, and we collectively move together, just like every other community does. And until we start to understand the way that the economic sphere and the way the political sphere works intersectionally, that's then when we're going to start thinking about, these are the aims and objectives. And then secondly, which links to my point about like black excellence, we have to start developing the mindset of just co-owning and owning the things that we want for our own destiny. So if we're moaning about the educational system, let's create an entity for ourselves. If we've got an issue with, let's say, social care providers, let's open up a children's home for ourselves. If we're worried about all of these entertainment industries, podcasts, films, whatever, why are we not doing it for ourselves? And of course, yes, you can work in partnership with people of difference, but what we can't keep doing is sitting in that space of blaming everybody else, but not thinking about how then we can create things for our own destiny. So one of the things that I talk about when you ask me the question, what does black excellence mean? It's a statement. It's a statement of demonstration that we can be, we are, we will, and we can. We just got to show each other and how it's done. And that's why I talk about being selfless. But I know that being selfless comes with a whole host of issues when it comes to community, when it comes to family, when it comes to friends. Sometimes, people strike when they know that you're weak or perceive you to be weak. But I think it's always important that you don't leave your morals, and that's my moral compass. As I said in the beginning, that my thing is always, I want my people to win.
Yeah.
Anybody that sits around me, we want to win. And if I can do anything that can put us in a situation where we're better, then it's sick, bro.
Yeah,
that's how we move forward.
That is amazing.
That's how we move forward. We open the doors for each other, and we don't watch each other in terms of who's getting benefit more than anybody else. We just move together as an entity. And the second somebody moves in that particular way, you got to cut them out, bro, because they're like a disease. Like a rotten apple. You don't put a rotten apple around the perfect apples.
Fresh apples.
Because after time, what will happen is the disease will start to spread, and that exists, sadly, in our communities, and all communities, by the way, but I'm being more specific in my world, that ultimately exists. Yeah. Because people are watching you through a lens that
you wouldn't watch
is
them
different to where you're watching them. And
there you go.
That's something I'm dealing with. So I'm being real with you in this conversation that that's something I'm still currently dealing with.
No, we all deal with it, man.
And I feel like it's important that we have to say these things because people think it's just glitz and glamour. People look on your Instagram and they look on your website and they're like, yo, my man's doing his thing. They're doing their thing. Bro. But one of the things they're not acknowledging is obviously the pain, the trauma, the tears, the anxiety, the fear, the imposter syndrome, and all of those things that kind of exist in your journey and in our connected journeys is the part that we oftentimes don't show and we don't display. And I think that it's important that we have these conversations much better and finding better ways of how we kind of have those therapeutic interventions and how we oftentimes have mediums of which that we can output. And one of my very close friends, Daniel Balgrave, talks about this a lot, about we have to start finding those particular outputs and we have to put ourselves in positions of being vulnerable. So I can't have these vulnerable conversations or expect people to be vulnerable in the community that I work with if I'm never
if you're not
open
open
to be vulnerable myself. And that's it, bro.
No, that's amazing, Craig. I feel like you touched on everything that you've gone through and also what you're doing. Can you give us a little bit of insight on what you've got planned for the coming 2023? Oh,
2023 got things planned. So I want to make leadway on my PhD. It's difficult at the moment. Hold on,
I'll give you that applause because we're supporting you on that one, man. That needs to be done.
So it's so hard because what I'm looking at is a study that hasn't been done in Birmingham since Professor Carl Chin done his PhD on the early groups in Birmingham, and that's how we learnt about the Peaky Blinders.
Okay.
It's from who his thing, but nobody's done a study about what happened next.
What is it? Would it be the same title then? Would it be something similar to what?
No, so I'm looking at basically serious youth violence and gangs in the context of the West Midlands, and I guess what I'm looking at is all of the groups that we know of that's made the news over the last 15, 20 years. So a lot of the people that I'm interviewing are some of what people would call as the olders, and some of the youths that are actively involved now. Some of them sadly have gone to prison for life. And that's been one of my challenges, is that when I've, like with one individual that I was interviewing, he went and done something crazy last year, and now he's serving a life sentence for that. So I just need to try and plod on with that. Number two,
all the best.
More stuff around just kind of, my advisory work. I got a big contract with the Premier League. I do a lot of stuff around the country with all of the teams in their academy. So all the stuff that we've touched on today around all of the players, doing stuff around kind of like knife awareness and kind of understanding how to build resilience. People have an assumption that footballers, especially the academy players, that, just because they might be the next ticket, life's good. But they're dealing with real issues as well, and oftentimes in the communities in which they have to navigate through, some of them are dealing with issues. So a lot of our sessions are around how do they build that resilience, and also for the staff in the academies to understand how
to deal with.
They can understand the issues because they're looking at it as, my man's just about to go clear in the football. Like, why would you carry a knife? So it's also getting them to understand, but also their parents. So that's what we do in the Premier League.
Who started that initiative? That's amazing.
So how it worked was, again, you see when you work good with people, bro.
Yeah.
So I have to big up Eva from Chelsea Football Club. So one of my students is very close friends with the head of safeguarding, and they said that this guy would be interested in doing some sessions around anti-racism. So this was following the George Floyd case.
Yeah.
And everybody was talking about being anti-racism, and they were very hot on in Chelsea about kicking racism outside of football. So I've done some sessions with that team. And then the Premier League hollered like, what's this that you've done at Chelsea Football Club? Because they put it on their website. And then that's how I got the contract with the Premier League. So they was like, all teams need to get this. And a good thing about Chelsea is now I'm working with the first team now. So out of all of the teams in the country, I'm doing some work with the first team now. And it's been nice, man. It's a different vibe. It's a completely different world for me. But that's kind of what I didn't want when I was at the uni. I didn't want to just teach criminology. I could teach much more. I could deliver much more. I have so
freely
much more
as well,
to give freely in my own time.
Yeah.
And then also, being able to command. I feel like that's something we're scared to talk about as well, like commanding what you see your value. People always get a bit nervous. I don't want to talk about the P's, bro. I don't want to talk about... But that's what I talking about. I'm going back to the point about black excellence. We should be in a position, and I think part of our problem in our communities, our parents and grandparents, they were givers, they were village people, charity people, and when we've gone into a lot of these spaces, we've got this kind of idea and mindset that we shouldn't charge for our services, and I'm saying why? When everybody else charges for their services. And again, it's that colonial mentality that we need to be here, and people say, "Oh, you need to be humble." No, bro, we need to level up.
Yeah, stick your chest
So
out,
if
man.
you're in a community and you see the local drug dealer pull up in a spaceship, why can't you pull up in a spaceship? Because you're podcasting?
For doing something good, yeah.
Why can't you? And these are the questions that we should ask, because for every time that someone in the community does something negative and shows the youths something negative, we need to be pulling up and showing, listen, you can do the same thing.
Wallah, bro, that is the biggest quote in any episode I've had.
That's black excellence.
That is black excellence.
That's black excellence, bro.
Oh my days. Chelsea actually signed a player from Ukraine. Like one of the most expensive players, and they're on the heat now because he was in Ukraine on Instagram saying the N-word a few times. Mm-hmm. So I think you might have to go there and teach black excellence to him as well soon, bro.
Good, bro. But it's all part of the journey and the discovery. As I said, things don't happen overnight.
Yeah, of course.
And this is part of our struggle. You know, our grandparents did what they did for our parents to get to where they are right now, and our parents did what they did for us to be able to stand and be counted. And the work that we do, I would hope, God willing, that the work that we do enables our children and the youths of the next generation look at us as individuals like, you know what, I want to be like him, I want to be like her, I want to be like them, and they move a certain type of way, but have their moral compass. Don't lose themselves.
Don't lose who you are.
Don't sell out. Don't feel that you have to be something that you're not. Just be yourself, and then cut through.
Carry on. So that's the Chelsea thing. Anything else? I don't want to put you under pressure, man. But I feel like you've always got a lot of things going on.
You know, I'm a person. I'm active and I like to be busy. There's some big things that I want to do. I think one of them is, you know, ideally I would like to open up another children's home.
That's good, man.
Maybe in a different city. So we're in conversations about that in a minute and what that looks like. Not set in stone. I want our current building to be excellent.
Yeah. No, it looks good. It looks good.
But that's how I am. Like, we need to have an excellent standard before we move on.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily about, I need to open as many as possible. I need the team to be excellent. So then it creates that domino effect of excellence. And that's how I've always moved. Like, for me, it has to be efficient. It has to be 10 out of 10. Or I'm just not on it. I don't deal with 9s and 9.5, bro. It has to be 10.
And then you can move on.
And then we can move on.
Have you ever noticed any other cities? Because I know you travel up and down the UK. Yeah. Any other cities where you thought this city needs a lot of work in terms of the next generation? I
think every city has its problems and its issues.
Of course.
For me, it's about who are the individuals that are out there really doing the work. Mm-hmm. And as I said, if you're using social media as your critique, it's probably not the best way to. You have to get in the great community.
You have to go inside,
and find out. You need to talk to people and find out what's essentially going on. But every issue, I feel like a lot of the rural spaces now are having a lot of the same issues that we're dealing with. So I do a lot of work in places like Norfolk. And it's because, remember, people are travelling. So if people are going OT and people have got runners going up and down, remember, I talk about this in my work in criminology, the culture of violence. So if a man's leaving from East London and going up to Norfolk, for example, and they do beer acid attacks, that then becomes the madness up there. Does that make sense?
The entire city,
and they're just like, yo, what's this all about? So then, if someone's going to go up there and do that and you hear beer shootings, the likelihood is that they're probably from Manny, Brum, Liverpool.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Because people travel with their culture. So what happens then in a lot of the areas outside of the inner cities is that people are traveling, moving, linking, meeting different types of people, and they're bringing their negative, sometimes, cultures with them. And then what you then have is a space that are saying, how do we respond? And that's where people like me come in.
That's good. What I usually do is I ask you a question in terms of giving back to the people that are watching today. So, what is the best advice you've ever gotten, Craig? And after that, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. What's the best advice you can give someone to obviously better themselves and be a better person in terms of black excellence? Sorry, it's a full loaded question.
Discover your lane. It's simple for me.
That's the best advice you've gotten.
Discover your lane. When you find out what your lane is, get on the road and execute.
Wow.
I feel like we live in a society where we think about what everybody else is doing. We live in a society where we're watching what everybody's doing. We live in a society where we're constantly comparing our lives to people that we see on social media that actually don't have great lives outside of social media. So I feel like once you go on that road of self-discovery and you find your lane, get on the road and execute.
And what advice would you give to someone who's Quite young, just left school. I think that's when you're most vulnerable. Just left school and is in a tug and pull war with his, should I do this or should I do what my mum told me to do? Or he's a bit confused, because that's where I think we're all a bit lost and we all get a bit misguided. What advice would you give to someone at that age, Craig?
It's a hard one, because I feel like this is my academic hat, and I feel like that's a very specific question, and every individual is unique. So what I would advise one child is not going to make any sense to another child. I'll go back to my point about that self-discovery. We've all been in that place where mum tells us to do one thing and we have that inner voice. And I guess part of it is about trying to find the inner voice, but having a real critical conversation about the pros and the cons, because if we become emotive in our decision making, sometimes it can derail us from what sometimes our parents see in terms of the greatness that we oftentimes possess. So without kind of over giving too much information and guidance and trying to come off like I'm some big sheikh or someone that just knows what I'm talking about.
You can always say,
I feel like it's just a person. You have to find that inner voice. You have to find that inner being that enables you to kind of really understand your purpose. And maybe that's what it is. Define your purpose. Know what the reason why you've been put on this earth. Look at your skills and abilities and utilize that, align with your purpose, get back on that road and execute.
It's beautiful, man. Craig, thank you so much for coming down today.
You're welcome,
I appreciate the conversation.
Nice every time, G.
Obviously, 2023 is looking like a full year for you. I've discovered you on Instagram and the amazing work that you do. So I bet a lot of people have also. Guys, your Instagram, put it down below.
Street
and also
Academics UK. Or just type Craig Pinkney.
Craig Pinkney. I'll put them both down below. Craig Pinkney and Street Academics UK. Solve CIC as well. So thanks, guys. If you wanna contact Craig for any information, just DM him. I appreciate the support again. Thanks a lot for supporting and subscribing. I always forget this part. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. This is After Hours. Thanks a lot.
Peace.